Greetings. I am Dr. Noni Davis, and I'm coming to you from Dr. Noni Shule here at St Sya Academy in North Carolina. I am a legacy owner of a private African Center school, and I just give thanks to my father, William Everett, the late William Everett Davis. Oh, yes, here was my earring, and my mother, who is still with us, Sylvia Davis. We all co-founded St. Sya Academy to make sure our students were educated. And one of the things that I have become, and I think a lot of it is because of my dad, is a historical uh, buff. I love a good historical uh, um, event, and visiting museums, and also just reading about the things that our people did. And I was just speaking to Mark a few minutes ago, who's helping out with this podcast. The importance of our children knowing the history that we have created here in the States. If you know your history, you won't be discouraged by your present, and you know that you can also have a great influence on the future. And so last week I did some research on African American spies because I was learning recently about some African Americans who participated in the Civil War. And there's a whole TV series out right now called The Gray House about these African Americans. But before I pursued that information or dug a little deeper in that information, I said, wait a minute, I know that they were also doing this during the Civil War. And so I wanted to do a quick recap about the people I learned, the African Americans I learned who were helping out with the Revolutionary War, um, just to build on that information before we move to this next one. And so I introduced African American spies of the Revolutionary War. And what's unbelievable, well, spies are always it's a very dangerous endeavor. But for African Americans, it was even, I mean, it could be immediate death right on the spot. There was not going to be a trial and a jury, and the executioner. You're going to be all that in that same moment. We saw you, we heard you, boom, you're out of here. And also not only that, but your body would be dismantled. And some situations people were eating black people. And so it was going to be brutal and very barbaric what happened to us. So the very fact that people were willing to put their lives on the line was just, but this was for their freedom and the freedom of their people, so it was worth it. But these incredible, courageous people were both men and women, and used the notion that of this white supreme foolishness that we have. Oh, black people are inferior. You have that Teutonic worldview that the white man was a superior race. That was promoted. As early as what the 1600s, to justify the enslavement of Africans. And and this it's white supreme stupidity. But our ancestors are like, oh, okay, you think I'm stupid, I'm going to play that role for you. And so therefore they just instead of saying, well, I'm actually smart and I can do it and I can do all these things and let me prove it to you, they're like, we're going to let you walk with that. And in the meantime, we're going to gather this information and prove that was contrary to what you thought. Now, the crazy thing is that this was in the 1700s. Africans probably, I mean, they thought, if I fight, no matter whose side I fight on, be it the British or the French or the Americans, I believe I'm going to get my freedom. And so just like in the Revolutionary War, they thought they were going to get their freedom, or that was the pursuit. The same thing was for the Civil War. Now, the thing is about the Civil War, this was between the North and the South. These are the people who were actually enslaving us, right? So they were like, okay, one way or the other, somebody's got to win. Where in the British were not the British were going back to Europe. Uh, whether the war was won or not, or maybe some of them would have stayed, but there were some people going to go back home. So that was a difference with this war. But I want to start with some of these incredible people, and the first person I mentioned last week was his name was, I mean, who is it? Okay, let's start with Kwaku. So, and then I found out that a lot of these names were also indigenous names of Ghana or wherever these people were from, and so that was really interesting. So the heroes and heroines of the Revolutionary War that I mentioned last week include Kwaku, whose espionage led to the capture of British General Richard Prescott in 1777. And then there was another guy, Cato, and Cato is also an East African name. Kwaku, I think, believes born on a Wednesday. Cato was another African American in the spy ring, and he passed hidden messages through packages he delivered, or he also pretended to be a tailor or a person who was bringing clothes to different people. And so he would, or packages. And so he would uh, come, I'm delivering this package, and the package would include a message um, from the English or about the British or whatever, from person to person. And then I also introduced James Armistead Lafayette, who, under direction of French General Marquis Lafayette, entered the camp of General Cornwallis in 1781 as an undercover spy, and he was pretending he was seeking refuge as an enslaved African. So he was a runaway, and he ended up uh, becoming a double agent, passing information, real information about the British to the American patriots, but fake information from the American patriots to the British. So the British were getting the lies, the patriots were getting the truth, or whatever. Now, one of the things that I also found out which is hilarious, is one of my students had found that uh, James Armistead Lafayette was compared to James Bond, and maybe his story influenced the James Bond series. I don't know about that, but I told the child that actually James Bond should be called the James Armistead Lafayette figure, because he was modeling. If anybody was modeling anybody, it would have been James Bond modeling his life, not he being a modern. I mean, James Bond from the past. If he was there first, how's he a James Bond from the past? Anyway, but anyway, he passed accurate information to the American patriots, like I said, and false information to the British. Now, another famous African American hero was named Antigua, and I think an African name that was close to that was Atego, and he worked as an agent for the Patriots of South Carolina, and he gathered information about how the troops are moving, and also their design. And I think he was also monitoring their, it may have been him or the other guy, another one of these guys who was also monitoring the health conditions and the morale of the troops. And so then you have Saul Matthews, who was another African American spy who was just like James Armistead of Lafayette, but he worked to undermine General Cornwallis as well. So you had two African Americans who were spies regarding Colonel General Charles Cornwallis, and also helped to create his defeat. I think, and I can't remember what was the name of it. He was defeated at, what was it? The siege of, oh, what was it? The siege, one of these sieges. I can't remember. I don't think oh Lord, I don't have it right here. Charles Cornwallis, the siege of in Virginia. Oh, I don't have it right here. I don't see it. But anyway, he okay, but anyway, so he lost whatever his battle was. Oh, Yorktown, Yorktown. So he lost Yorktown up there in Virginia. I've been to Yorktown too a couple of times. So anyway, so the other thing that other guy was Saul Matthews. Oh, I talked about Saul Matthews. So the only documented female African American spy that I found for the Revolution during the revolutionary time was Elizabeth Liss. And I talked about her a little bit. And she was born in 1763 in Oyster Bay, New York. And she escaped her own owners because she came in contact with this British guy named Simcoe, who told her, if you join the British, then, you will be able to get your freedom. So at the age of 16, she ran away. Now, what happened when she ran away is that she unfortunately was recaptured and re-enslaved after she got her freedom by a British soldier. And so she finally was able to make contact with her previous owner. She was owned by the Townsend family, who at some point became more abolitionist leaning than or freedom leaning or manumission oriented versus you know slave owners. Even they did not free her, but she was still they treated their enslaved people differently. So she got in contact with him, and he was able to buy her from this British soldier, and then she came to live with him for a couple of years. His family in Oyster Bay, or in Manhattan. I think he took her to Manhattan. Then she was purchased. He sold her to another person. So, and this person promised to take care of her. I think her name was Swan. I can't remember what's her name. Robert Townsend repurchased. Da, 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 da. And so she was like Anna Swan, I think, Shawan. And so she promised that she would keep, um, uh, what's her name, Liz, and who at this time had a baby who was probably the son of this British soldier, but her son's name was Harry. So she promised that she would treat her well. And but her husband died, and then so she remarried, and she remarried this really horrible person. Apparently, they had a really bitter divorce, and so of course, in this time, the husband owns the wife's property, so he was able to gain custody or gain ownership of both Harry, the little boy, and Liz. And then he decided to sell Liz, and he sold her to South Carolina. Now she's down there in South Carolina under a crazy person who it was extremely nasty, and in Charleston, South Carolina. Mr. Townsend was out, doing Revolutionary War work, and apparently took him a couple of years to find out what happened to Liz. Once he found out what happened to Liz, he said, "Okay, we're going to have to try to get her back." So he was now like a member. What was he? He became aware of what happened to Liz, and he was also a member of an anti-slavery group in New York. It was called the New York Manumission Society, and he located Harry and purchased him back. And then he had to figure out how he was going to get Liz, and apparently they had to smuggle Liz out of South Carolina to get her back to Manhattan. And the reason why is there were some laws, but you could not bring slaves into New York, so they had to smuggle her across the border and get her back to her hometown of Oyster Bay. Now, I think they said that she was 40 before she got her freedom. So she was 16 when all of this started, 22 when she was sold down to this guy in Charleston. I don't remember how long it took for her to get back to Oyster Bay, but she did. And by the age of 40, she finally did get her freedom. And then, I also forgot to mention that she had something to do with Benedict Arnold being exposed as a undercover spy. So she was so that was one of her major things that she was involved in before when she was working as a spy. I didn't even talk about her spy work. She was working as a spy for Robert Townsend, and she participated in the exposure of Benedict Arnold. Benedict Arnold did escape, but it caused a problem for Robert Townsend, which is why he had to go undercover too and escape, because they were all participating in what do they call it? It was called the Culper spy ring. And so that one right there, I mean, I think I want to write a book about that one because that was crazy. But what is interesting is just like it took her several years, lists several years to get her freedom. It also took Lafayette and I think of Saul and Tego several years, in some cases almost a decade, after they had done all this spy work for them to actually get their manumission papers, and that's crazy. I think the only one who did get his right away was the first guy that I brought you, Kwaku. I think he got his, and then the other guy who I talked about was Kwaku, and I think it was Kato. Both of them were given their freedom papers, but these all of these people were mentioned in historical documents by generals. And so what I wanted to do now though is like, okay, so this is what we were doing during the Revolutionary War. What was our participation during uh the Civil War? So these historical stories, I mean, I want to put this, these inspirational histories have been hidden gems of American history. However, they were definitely the beginning of the African involvement in revolution. So we know that ever since our ancestors stepped on this land, a lot of times we are thinking, I am not my ancestors, but are we doing everything that they did to get their freedom? And I think that for those who are saying I am not my ancestors, they don't really know their history. They don't know how our ancestors were actually fighting and extremely determined to have their freedom. And so another historical monumental revelation of Africans and espionage was during, like I said, the Civil War. And a new television series is called Gray House. Let me see if I can pull up the Gray House because that was interesting. Gray House. Let me see. The Gray House. I want everybody who can to go check it out. The Gray House. Gray House. The Gray House. So this is an advertisement for the Gray House. Uh-oh. Okay. The Gray House. That's it right there. The Gray House. And it's got the two women, Eliza and Elizabeth Van Luz, and then you see the black girl in the background. She is representing Mary Bowser. And so this story is really interesting too. And I'm so glad they created this series, this 8 series. And it's very, very intense. So in this series, you're going to see Mary Bowser. You're going to meet these women, and these three women, these two white women who lived in Richmond, Virginia, who and who were very determined, apparently, in Richmond, Virginia, that they were abolitionists. The series focuses on the true story of Mary Bowser, who was a spy in President Jefferson Davis's Confederate presidential house in Richmond, Virginia. She was part of a spy ring with Elizabeth Van Loo, a white wealthy woman, and her white wealthy Southerner in Richmond, Virginia. And let me see if I can find my pictures. And this video movie was produced by Kevin Costner and oh my gosh, Morgan Freeman. All right, so here is a picture of Elizabeth Van Loo, and she was a Southern lady and a Yankee spy. So that's her picture. And then I couldn't find a picture of her mother necessarily, but I did find a picture of the gray house. And it's crazy because they burnt this house down, I think in 1913, and rebuilt it with something else because they were so mad that these two white women had the audacity to and maybe this is a picture, that's the best picture I could find of her mother, Van Loo. I mean, Eliza. So her mother's name was Eliza, and the daughter's name was Elizabeth Van Loo. And I think Eliza died in 1875, a few years after the war. Now, so the video, I think they have her dying before the thing was over. But when Mr. Van Loo, her husband, and Eliza's husband, and Elizabeth's father died, they decided to free all their Africans and created and they also purchased all of their relatives from nearby farms and freed them too. So literally, they had their plantation, but all the Africans on their plantation were free. And so, like I said, this series is very hard to watch. You've got African men in chains. You have them being carted back and forth in these wagons with bars around them. You have they have these cages where they put them in while in for auction and everything, being sold and transferred. You see how Africans were being killed on the spot for the slightest offense. It was very hard for me to watch. It's very graphic, but it's very honest. You see people being hanged, you shot, brutally beaten, even there was this one person who was found out to be a spy, and you had to witness his hanging. So it was really very graphic, and I would not recommend it for children. But the three women in this story are, like I said, Elizabeth Van Loo's, Eliza Van Loo's, and Elizabeth's mother, and Mary Browser, who are the leaders of this underground spy network. And they also recruited the other Africans who they had freed to participate in this thing. And then it also showed you the broader network of people who were operating businesses, people who were even a brothel worker, stagecoach drivers, all of these other ordinary folks were part of the spy ring. Now, Mary Richards Browser is very interesting. She was born in, let me see, do I have a picture of her? So this is a picture that they believe is of her. I'm not sure because, that's what they have of her. And that was in Petersburg, Virginia. And then they also have another picture of her right here. And so I don't ever know which one is which, but that's what it says, Mary Bowser. All right. And so Mary was an unusual child. They said that she was born in Richmond, Virginia, on the Van Loo plantation. And after Mr. Van Loo died, like I said, they freed all their slaves and then got all the slaves from the relatives of their enslaved population. They went out and found the relatives, and then they freed them too. Now, one of the historical claims is that Mary was educated in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. So once they freed her, they recognized that she was brilliant. So they sent her to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, according to Kathy Alexander, Legends of America. And there are also claims that then after she left Philadelphia, she traveled to Liberia, and she was working in Liberia, West Africa in 1855. So at this point, she was born, I think she was born in 1839. And so at 21 years old, by the time she was 21 years old, no, she went to Liberia in 1855. So she was She was a youngster, maybe about 15 years old, I think. Um, let's see, uh, 39. Yeah, she was just a baby when she went over there. Um, yeah, about 16 years old when she went to Liberia in 1955, but 1855 rather. And so while she was there for like about 5 years, they said. In 1860, when the rumors of the Civil War started, emerging, she was like, "Oh, I think I'm going to go back home." So at this point, she was 21 or 22 years old, and in the movie, they have her being, returning back to the plantation, which she did, and somehow they managed to get her to work in Jefferson Davis's house. I don't know, the story took some, creative license, but somehow she did end up working for President, Jefferson Davis, and she was well known and she was extremely educated. Now, this woman had a photographic memory. So, um, they want, and I guess that's what they realized about her. Anything she saw, anything she read, she was already educated, but she was also able to see something and remember all the details of it. And so, but the problem was that because she was well educated, she had to pretend that she was not. So once again, just like with the Africans who were during the Revolutionary War and all the other Africans, she was actually literate and actually could read and write and do the vernacular. So I guess similar to like Frederick Douglass, it would be very hard for him to pretend that he was an enslaved person. But so what she had to do is make sure she kept the same vernacular, the same mannerisms, even though she had been abroad and been attended school in the North. She now had to come back and enter this world of enslavement and fool these generals and everything. So, and it's extremely dangerous. So, you see her uh, having to placate to the head black head man, mistress of the household, and of course they acted like they were really suspicious of her. But even within the house, she formed a network of people, reading to them and interacting with them according to the script. But she would also go, find her way into the house and into these spaces where she could overhear conversations. And then there were times when she would go in there and pretend like she was cleaning up and go through the paperwork, look for the plans, and then would send that information. Sometimes they sewed it into dresses, sometimes they put it inside of dishes that were made or whatever, and get this information back to the Van Loos, and then the Van Loos would send this information to the Union soldiers. Found a way to get this information to Union soldiers, and it was just really interesting to see how these people were collaborating to make sure that the Union was getting this information. One of the things they did acknowledge is that at first folks were ignoring their information because they're like, bunch of women, who's listening to these women? Nobody believes that these women are capable of making sure of passing on this very strategic information. But at some point they started to realize they were getting the right information. And I guess after a few crazy things happened, they were like, wait, these women really do know what they're talking about. And so um and they were accommodated once the Civil War was over, and they were acknowledged by Abraham Lincoln, giving commendations, giving different kinds of positions. I think Elizabeth Van Luz became the postmaster, the first female postmaster in Richmond. And then Mary Bowser went on to open freedom schools and teach. And I think that she ended up in West Indies. So they don't really know when she died, but by 1867, she left the area and had a daughter and got married, remarried. But her life, and she was Mary Richards at this time. But it was an amazing story, and I really encourage everybody to watch it and also to do more study about these women. And there need to be books, I guess, and that I'm gonna have to write about the powerful, these amazing people who really put their lives on the line and did that work to help us get free or get closer to freedom. And so we just honor them and respect them and give them thanks for what they did. Ashe, ashe.
Another great show. So we'll get ready to end it. I was listening and learning all that great information that you have and everything like that. So I think
Yes.
I'll end it with a couple of commercials, including the commercial from my friend that wrote the book
Okay.
about his family and everything like that. So we'll
Okay.
go out with that one, and we'll go out with a couple of other ones, including the one from your school and everything like
Okay.
that. But let's check this out.
All right. Thank you.
They were never supposed to win. In a system built to keep Black families landless, one decision changed everything. Bitter Ground's Inheritance tells the true story of heirs who fought through Jim Crow, courts, challenges, and silence to claim land, wealth, and legacy. Told by descendant Captain Newborn, this is more than a story, it's a rare victory. A must-read that exposes America's hidden past. Get your copy today.
If you're talking, they will hear you.
We all want our kids to grow up safe and healthy, so we show them how. And we tell them with honest conversations that let them know what we expect. Not just one time, but every chance we get. That's especially important when it comes to alcohol and other drugs. Kids not only need to know the dangers and how to avoid them, they need to hear it often from you. And when it comes to pain medications, opioids, they need to know that they should never be taken without a prescription and never shared with friends or family. It's dangerous and illegal. So talk with your kids and guide them through the challenges of growing up safe and healthy. Because when you talk, they hear you. For more information about talking with your kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
So talk, they hear you. You can do it if you try.
I'm a St Sya student. Of course I walk into the sound of drums.
I'm a St Sya student. Of course I know my mother.
I'm a St Sya student. Of course I can play the drum.
I'm a St Sya student. Of course I can work with my hands.
I'm a St Sya student.